Very excited and very honored to be speaking to the both of you today. So let's start from the basics. What is design thinking for all of us that have joined here? In simple words, the simplest.
Design thinking is human-centered, scientific-based, and it's about approaching design by considering human experience rather than what should be. I will leave that as one sentence.
Yeah, I don't think I could have said that better. So with that, yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah, that is exactly easy to understand. And now, for you, Sevda, design thinking, what inspired you to learn more about it and then become a pioneer in the field?
Well, I knew from day one of my challenges were I always looked at what's not working. Often I was criticized about that, like, why don't you focus on this? But I'm like, but if that's not working, why is that not working? So honestly, I feel like me having that type of personality, focusing on what's not working, have always encouraged me to start looking for new solutions. And as an artist and as a designer, I wanted to obviously make that solution in a creative and inspiring way, which led me to start studying design and architecture. And that's how I ended up here, just focusing on what's not working, what's the best way to solve this problem, and how can we make it look and feel good.
What about you, Sheila? What inspired you to join the path of design thinking?
In my industry, I think it echoes on a lot of what Sevda just said. I personally have always been a problem solver, and when I entered into, I'm in software engineering, tech, product consulting. That's what I've specialized in over the years. And when I entered into the workforce, I was kind of shocked at that stage. I'm not going to date myself, but that was quite a while ago. As to how much, especially in the internal business world, there was no consideration for what we call user experience, which is basically the tech version of design thinking. It's really appealing to what are people, how are we going to make people feel? What is the usability of this, and how are we going to make it the most effective to solve their problems? It was really at that time, from a business application standpoint, which is where I've spent most of my career, it was very centric around, well, it doesn't matter. It's just a business application. Like, they just needed to do their job. And so that has evolved over time. But me kind of coming out of user experience studies and then entering into the workforce and then seeing the lack of it really kind of inspired me to want to work more in there.
That's awesome. Now that we've heard from the both of you about what has inspired you, I want to introduce the both of you to everybody here today. We have Sevda Javandita, who is a global multidisciplinary designer whose focus is to elevate human life experience through innovative design and problem solving. Like she mentioned, she looks after the problems. Design is a necessity, not a luxury, she says. And her vision is to make design accessible to everyone. And her multicultural background, which I'm excited to learn about, has encouraged her to be a world traveler, giving her the ability to obtain multiple design and architectural degrees across the globe, which empowers her to serve people deeply across diverse cultures. Thank you, Sevda, for being here. And on the other hand, our other pioneer, Sheila Chapari, is the founder and the principal of Parita Group, a consulting agency specialized in providing customer and employee engagement solutions built with Microsoft and open source technologies. Her goal in starting Parita Group was to provide organizations enterprise-grade consulting services with a boutique experience. She got her professional start as a software engineer and has since served in many roles within the professional service industry. Prior to starting Parita Group, her focus areas included capability development, enterprise architecture, and practice management for various Microsoft platforms. Sheila, so good to have you here as well. And now that we know what's inspired them and who they are, also we'll keep it pretty open. We obviously have a few conversations that are going to be going on, but feel free to chime in and send in your questions when you feel right, and we can just go along from there. Sounds good? So my first question to the both of you ladies would be, how do you implement design thinking in your field of work? Because both of you do things a bit differently, however, your focus remains the same. And what does that actually look like?
I can go first, Sevda, if you'd like.
Yes, of course.
Sure. Like I was mentioning, our world of design thinking, when I kind of started educating myself on the actual principles of design thinking, it was not that long ago, honestly. But what I quickly realized was the principles were all of the same things that we are taught to do in application design. And every industry has that kind of element, whether that in software, it could be the architecture of the software from a usability, from a design standpoint of how things interact with one another. Most often, if you're dealing with customer-facing solutions, you have big, heavy user experience where you actually have graphic designers, user experience designers that are working through making sure that you have the most compelling, experiences to solve what those emotional needs are, and all of these other things that come from more of a marketing centric world. And then where we commonly sit in addition to the the front end customer stuff is again that business area of that didn't really get very much love until I would say, 5 years ago, I'd say is when it started to become more of a thing of actually commoditizing business solutions and trying to build those things. And my organization, we specialize in low code platforms. And as a result, you're able to quickly apply these design thinking principles using prototype solutions that are actually built on the platform that you're writing the solutions on. So instead of having to do all this extra work of wireframing and all of these things that we do in tech to surface up what these experiences should look like, you can actually go directly into the solutions and do them. So a lot of cool stuff that has evolved with this low code paradigm that you guys might have heard about in some of the other sessions.
Yeah, I think that was awesome the way you explained it, because design thinking is such a buzzword in the industry now. People throw it everywhere. And it's difficult to understand how it can actually be implemented. So the same question to you, Sevda, how do you implement design thinking in your field of work? And what does that actually look like?
Well, first, to me, the first step is stepping away from cookie color designs, which means when people approach, hey, I want this style, or I want my house or my space look this way. And it's just, it's kind of sometimes funny. Like they often come to me with already solved their problems. Like, hey, this is what I want. And I'm like, okay, let's backtrack this. What are you actually experiencing? What is not working for you in your life? Not just in your home, but what do you want to see happen in your life? And then let's look at your space and see if your space is actually giving you any support in what you want to see happen in your life. Is it supporting your goal? Is it motivating you? Is it driving you? And so that we begin with understanding their problem as a person in their life, so then everything that is designed is supporting that person, that personality, their motivation, their goals, and who they want to become in their life. Because your space, think about it this way. Would you agree with me that your space is affecting how you feel? And then how you feel is directly linked with how you think. Now, think about it, especially now, we're spending more than 90% of our times indoor. So then you are waking up and sleeping and working in an environment that's constantly affecting how you think and how you feel. And if those thinking and feelings are repeated every day, they become a part of your personality and what you do in every day. So therefore, if you backtrack that, you can literally change somebody's personality and their goal and their life through their space. And that is my motto for designing for people. And that's why I say design is not a luxury. It's a necessity. Everybody should have access to design so that they can feel their best and treat others the best way that they can.
That was well said. Just a follow-up question on what you just said. How does accessibility to design thinking change for individuals? Do you think design thinking is accessible to all? Or do you think you have to, gain certain years of experience and then fall in the realm or use design thinking?
Absolutely. So design, if it was obviously that easy, everybody would implement it. A lot of companies say that, but when it comes to actual user experience, you backtrack and you see things are designed just to look good, and it's actually not functioning and not changing user experience. And this goes to every field of design. It starts with visual design, it goes to fashion and buildings and everything. So when it comes to having access, if us as designers, we want to give different type of access to us so that it's not only the elite and who can really afford interior designers can actually do something with that, then I want to make that accessible. So by providing, for example, DIY solutions, by letting them understand what they can do differently, by educating them, providing some value and feedback, that's how we can have design accessible for everybody, because not everybody is going to have all the skill sets need to implement those ideas. But if we help them problem solve and understand why things are not working and help them with their solutions, that's going to be the biggest drive for them, by making them understand what's not working first.
Yeah, that's definitely powerful. Now in technology, Sheila, how do you implement that? How do you tell someone that something is not going to function when they want it to look a certain type of way?
You know what reminds me, you said something about architecture as far as, building architecture. And I just had this funny thing. We've got this building in St. Louis that's, it's the coolest looking thing you could possibly see. It's this big circular building. It's a circle. And I had my prom dinner at the top and it rotated and all of that. That building is basically condemned now because this difficulty of maintaining it was so unwieldy that nobody wants to buy it, even though it looks really cool on the outside. So it was just thinking about that, because I think that parallels again, what happens in technology, which is there's a balance of design, and I'll use these terms differently, and just design of a graphic and all of these kind of aesthetic things versus the user experience, right? And yes, they should complement one another. Yes, you want color schemes that are going to match, the personas that you want to convey, or whatever. I'm not a marketer, so I can't really say all the fancy terms for that. But most important is making things with simplicity and intuition, and making sure that everything is most of the effort is making it look like it was easy to do. Right, kind of like a DJ. I use these analogies to a DJ that's really good. You don't notice them. If they're not good, you notice it, right? So if you're doing everything up front and you don't realize how much work is going into it, that should be a seamless kind of output that comes with it. And that's kind of where all the back end, making sure everything flows right, making sure that you're not doing too many mouse clicks, or all these kind of different metrics that you can use in software to make sure that everything's working right.
Absolutely.
I would like to add to
Yeah.
something Sheila said. So talking of like the graphic design and color schemes and aesthetic, it is, I think it is often very taken for granted how much those colors, even a shape is affecting human behavior, because every color actually have certain frequency that affects how you see and how you behave. There's a reason that traffic light has the color red and green and yellow. Like those are all designed based on human behavior. So our behavior changes based on those aesthetic shape, form, and the space that we're in. So they're all interconnected. And just like Sheila said, you notice it when things don't working. It's almost like breathing, right? You don't think breathing is difficult unless you can't breathe. You're
Yeah.
like,
You don't
oh,
think
I'm
breathing
out
is
of breath.
important. Yeah, that's well said as well. So building on that, both of you have built solutions for a wide array of clients and customers and products and services. Do you feel that the size of an organization or the size of the problem impacts your approach? Or do you feel like you can go in step one design thinking and build it out till step 10? Or do you sometimes feel like you have to jump right into step 4?
Sure. Yeah, I've spent my company is all based on consulting for other organizations. Sometimes that might have an end product that goes to an end customer, but our primary clients are businesses. And most often, depending on the size, yeah, there's a level of nimbleness. I don't know if that's the right word, but that comes with different sized organizations or their evolution in adopting principles such as agile and things that we have in our kind of tech world to allow for more rapid fire progress. So I would say depending on more so, I would say depending on that level of maturity than the size of the organization. In our world, we have what we call application lifecycle management. I won't get into too much technical detail on it, but basically there are two fundamental camps. There is what we call waterfall, where you build out everything in advance and then you go build it and then you come back. And 99% of the time what's built doesn't match what was written, right? And so as a result, that continuous feedback that a design principle or design thinking principles have, it doesn't align very well. Now, if you're able to implement agile principles, which are much more rapid, deliver something and then iterate on that and continuously build on that, that gives continuous feedback that you're then able to prototype, build, get feedback, prototype, build, get feedback, and then continuously move. So I would say more than size, it's probably just the level of agile maturity that an organization has.
So just to follow up on that, because I work in the same field and I see that the transformation from traditional to, the agile way of thinking is drastic and it's often very difficult. And
Yep.
now in these last 18 months of the pandemic, obviously people have been forced to go agile, right? More organizations are now implementing.
You have to adopt tech principles to be able to live in this world, right? You had to do it.
Absolutely.
You weren't going to survive.
So
yeah.
do you have a story that you could share with us where
so we specialize also in those what we call agile transformations, right? We work on that with customers because it's an evolution and it doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes in these microcosms of, okay, I got to get Zoom implemented in my entire organization by tomorrow. Like you have all hands on deck to go get that done. Yes. But it is an evolution of capability. You need to have coaches that are guiding you through the process. You need to, and it's very similar to the design thinking principles. The Agile Manifesto and design thinking definitions, they go very much hand in hand with one another. But usually what I do with these transformations, you start with smaller subsections. If it's a big organization, start with smaller subsections, do a pilot, make sure that it's, getting some uptick, and then, kind of build out from there and evangelize. Because what usually happens is that old school framework of when is it going to be done? When is it going to be done? I need to know how much more this is going to cost and how much it's going to take and blah, 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 blah. Instead, when you start continuously delivering visual progress, the question quickly becomes, oh, I want more of this. And it's a completely different dynamic from there.
Yeah, I think the agile and the design thinking going hand in hand also brings, you know, the innovators of product and, you know, the technology space together. Because oftentimes I've seen that there is some sort of disparity between the two. Somehow, you know, tech teams and tech leads feel a disconnect. And sometimes, you know, thinking alike is often difficult because you want something to function a certain type of way, right? The designers want this, and then the tech team comes in and says, no, sorry, that's not going to be possible. So, you know, going off,
I'd rather learn that right at the beginning, right? Than have that go down, you know, if it isn't technically possible. Sometimes you can kind of challenge that and come up with different solutions. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that is something that, you know, has been kind of the way the industry is on trend now, right? Challenging the status quo, going back, reworking the model. So it's really nice to hear from you on that. Now going off of this, because I see we have a timer ticking as well, and I feel like I could spend all day with the both of you talking about this. How have you seen design thinking evolve? You know, from the very beginning of when it was introduced, the IDEO method that all of us in college have watched, you know, the shopping cart video, to now the agile principle of the post-pandemic era, where design thinking is a very common, you know, training and a leadership platform. So how have you seen it evolve over the years?
I'll probably defer to Sevda for the earlier stages. I will say I've seen it evolve over the years, and that people are actually paying attention to it in our sector now. It used to be, oh, that's just for, you know, fancy startups that are just trying to do something like Facebook. We don't need to think like that, right? And basically the adoption in the tech sector again has continuously upticked, where it's not just the Silicon Valley style. The product ownership, the all of those roles that are aligned with that. Again, the agile and all that stuff that has, you know, exponentially upticked just in the last, you know, 5 to 10 years, I would say.
I would say design thinking has been there, although the practice of design thinking is fairly new, because like you said, everybody uses the term like design thinking, but how much are you actually implementing that has to do with how sustainable your design is. Like Sheila was mentioning, we have this building that it looks all gorgeous and all of that, and nobody wants to move in. Is it sustainable? So design thinking is directly linked with sustainability, because you are actually focusing on how that design is going to impact and influence those people who are going to experience that, whatever that product is or service is. And I think that changes over time based on if they can adapt, they last. If not, then you see them just dropping on the market, like Guy Kawasaki was speaking about that yesterday. It's always about thinking the next curve. So those who were able to adopt, they remained in the market, and now we're spending thousands of dollars just to feel that experience, because it makes us feel special. And even luxury goes back to experience. It's not about the ticket price only. It's the certain experience that you go through that evolved through design thinking. And I actually want to like link that back to your previous question, Pari, that you said if it changes based on the size of organization. Absolutely, especially in my field, because if I'm designing for a boutique restaurant or just a shop, user experience and customers are very different than somebody's living in a home, because we want to interview and see, like I even talk to the kids at home, hey, what do you like to see happening? What do you not like about it? And then making that more sustainable is the only way that we can see that evolvement. If it doesn't sustain, then your system was failing and it didn't work. So that's where it goes back to restarting until testing it.
Yeah, I have a little bit more to tack on, because I think you made a good point there. So in, again, getting back into the tech world, most often, we do a lot of these, another buzzword in our industry is digital transformation. You've probably heard that one a lot, and I'm not really sure what it means exactly, but we do a lot of those types of initiatives. And to completely transforming an organization of 20 into, you know, a new, more modernized tech stack or whatever it is, pretty, you know, bespoke kind of, you know, thing you can just, you know, do more turnkey. If you're talking about, you know, thousands persons organization with all of these different business units and all of these different areas, you're not going to take the same approach with that. You're going to start with more of the, you know, upfront assessments and how is everything current state working, and how are you actually putting everything together, and how can you reconcile all of the current state into what you want that ideal future state. And then you're not going to get there immediately. You have to build a roadmap to get to there. And ideally, you're doing that in a way that is not going to require that big, massive transformation again. You're building it in such a way that you're adopting these new principles where you can just continuously evolve over time and not have to get stuck on an old platform that you're just kind of, you know, stuck on.
So keeping this in mind, if someone knows that their organization or their team requires design thinking, where they do feel stuck, how do they introduce this idea or this, you know, digital transformation future, which, you know, quite honestly, I agree with you, it's just thrown around everywhere. You know, scaling your business is thrown around everywhere. So how does one introduce these ideas to their organizations or to their management teams in a way where they listen?
Yeah, there's different business cases or whatever the case is for why somebody would need or want to make a change. Often it's, I have to, like, I'm getting end of life with these things and I can't, I have a circular building that's going to crash and I need to figure out what I need to do to just tear it down and start over. That's not the most ideal. You don't want to get to the point where you have to get to that kind of triage state. And you don't want to lead with fear either, like, oh my God, you know, your organization is going to crash and burn. But the same thing we were just talking about with the pandemic, you have to stay agile. You have to keep moving. So most often for me, it's the design thinking principles. What are your pain points? What are the problems you're experiencing with these inefficiencies? How can we start, you know, thinking about how to address those? And stage one of that is going to be just repaving the highway. We're not going to do all the sexy, fancy transformation-y stuff where we're building, you know, a new innovative place. We got to repave the highway first. And that's not going to be the, you know, most ideal part of it. But in order to start, we got to start there. And then you build out, again, those roadmaps to make it more realistic for people to kind of digest how you're going to get from this place to this seemingly insurmountable place on the other side of it.
Yeah, I think starting small and simple will always win. So I completely agree with you. What about you, Sevda? How does one introduce the idea of design thinking to their management?
Design thinking, it's just a philosophy. It's not like a one thing that we can just take it and do it. It's a process. It's about creating that culture. I think that's the best way to approach it, creating that culture that, hey, we care about you. What do you want to see happening? What is not working for you? Let's understand why. Where are you coming from? I think that's the best way to start to create more intimate and transparent communication within the workspace, within home, everywhere we go. That's the beginning of design thinking, by focusing on individual rather than everything else that is happening around them. So working from inside to outside is what's going to help best. And that has been my approach, in which makes it, some call it like a little more holistic with my design process as well. But it starts with individual. how are you feeling today? What's not working? Let's
Um,
discuss that.
start small and build out. And I like, yeah, basically, I know we're coming up to time, but it reminds me of when people ask for AI in their organization. It's not like you just turn on AI and there it is, right? There's a philosophy and a process that has to come with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this was lovely. Now, I wish this was longer, but it was awesome learning from the both of you of how you implement design thinking in your own fields and how one can, go ahead and introduce the idea. And your stories were remarkable. So thank you to the both of you for joining me.